So we have been into talking about revival. And so we're going to get right into it, if you all don't mind. We've been in the book of Chronicles. And one of the things that, let me ask you a question. How many of you all really feel like in your life right now, you're just drained? It just seems like, Lord, I just don't have anything else to give. We're at the end, the tank is empty. I don't know about you, but there are sometimes I look at my life and I think the little red light's on. That said, hey man, I need to stop and fill up because we're really getting close to running on fumes. And sometimes we look around and we think, well, okay, Lord, it's got to get better. I know it does. Because I know that every moment of our lives we're getting closer and closer to you just saying, son, I love my children. I can't see any more pain. They've endured enough. Let's come and take them home. But can I tell you something? This isn't just a you feeling. I think this is about an everybody feeling. I think our nation, every day you look, I used to be a news watcher constantly. I've quit watching a lot of the news. I've gone back to watching The Restless Gun, Have Gun Will Travel. I've gone back to watching Perry Mason, I Love Lucy. I've gone back to looking at these shows because they bring us back to a time in our life when we weren't stressed out. It was just such a great time, not just in our life, in our nation. Going back to sitting on the porch and talking to your neighbor, or going to the front gate and just talking to your neighbor, or cooking a dish and taking it to your neighbor. Or just sitting in the stores and talking. Or, yes, leaving your door unlocked. I had a shirt on. I wear different shirts. And the reason I wear different shirts is all the shirts that I wear, I do it to draw attention. They're conversation starters. Yesterday I had, I'm a veteran, okay? I'm not a Marine, so I didn't live by this leave no man behind, in the Marines. But I had a shirt on, and it's a Christian shirt, and it says, his mission is to leave no man behind. And so I was at Kroger, and there's a guy that I saw there, and I hadn't seen him for a long, long time. He was always a cashier, and a friendly guy, always smiling and talking. I hadn't seen him for about 6-7 months, and yesterday I had to get gas in my wife's car, and so I went to get gas, I wasn't getting gas. I was getting ice. She had gotten the gas. I was getting ice because our kids were coming over, and I had forgotten it at the store, and there was and you get mad at yourself every once in a while because as soon as you check out, you remember, man, I went to get ice too, and I forgot to get the ice. And you're really upset, and you're really mad, and you're really in a hurry. And so I grabbed the bag of ice, and I go up to the cashier there, and there's Paul that I hadn't seen in 6 months. And he looks at me and he says, man, I love your shirt. He said, 19 years ago, I gave my life to Jesus. So we sat there and talked for about 5 minutes. not just about Jesus. We talked about Rome. We talked about Greek mythology, and we talked about all of the things that happened in the world and how the Bible changed the world and so many things that were going on. And God held everybody back so that we were not interrupted for 5 minutes. I went away from there just happy. I'd forgotten that I had forgot ice. I got my ice at a point a minute. And there are times that we forget that we all need an increase of God's power in our life. And yesterday I got my fill up. I didn't get it from a pump. I got it from a young man. He's probably in his late 30s. With just a 5-minute conversation is all it took. And so when we begin to look at some background to what's going on here and what's happening, because we're in the book of Chronicles and kind of walking through. And the great thing about Sunday morning, you're getting a 30,000 foot overview of this message. This isn't like what I do on Wednesday night. On Wednesday night, I would never get through this in 45 minutes, okay? And so today we're going to try this, okay, to see if we can do this. So we're going to look at this section of Chronicles, and we're going to go go 3 chapters today, okay? We're going to go 14, 15, and 16 of First Chronicles. Or Second Chronicles, okay? So, in 2 Chronicles chapter 10 through 13, Solomon had been the king, okay? And then Solomon had died, and he has a son. And in 2 Chronicles chapter 10 through 13, his first son that succeeded Solomon on the throne was a son by the name of Rehoboam. Now there's 4 chapters, 10 through 13, to talk about Rehoboam. And you need to understand something about Rehoboam. Rehoboam was not a wise king, okay? The children of Israel had asked Rehoboam when he ascended to the throne, would you please decrease our taxes? Well, instead of decreasing the taxes on the people, what Rehoboam did was, sound familiar? He increased the taxes. He increased it enormously, okay? And what happened was, when Rehoboam raised the taxes, the nation divided. And it divided into two different kingdoms. It divided into Israel and Judea. And it stayed that way. Why? Because of a king making unwise decisions. And so what ended up happening was there were 10 tribes in the north, and those were the tribes of Israel. There were 2 tribes in the south, and those were called Judah, okay? Now, 19 kings ruled over Israel. But not one of those kings that followed Rehoboam in the nation of Israel followed the Lord. Every one of those 19 kings that were kings of Israel went against God. In the nation of Judah, there were 20 kings, and most of them did follow the Lord. And so what ends up happening is, now Ezra is telling the story in Chronicles about people who are distressed. They used to be united. Now they're totally divided. One kingdom, Israel, is completely against God now. The smaller portion of Judah, the two tribes, they're trying to hang on and follow God and do what is right. And so what you'll find is after Rehoboam, there comes two kings, and both of their names start with A, okay? The first one was Abijah, or Abijah, and he only reigned for 3 years. And so we're not going to go to him, we're going to go to Asa, okay? Now, Asa was not a perfect king, but he was a good king. And coming from him is we're going to learn some things today that we need, okay? Because what's going to happen is Asa is going to try and teach us about through the life, or Ezra is going to try to teach us out of the life of Asa, 3 things that we're going to have to do, okay? And that is this. Here is the lesson. That even though you and I are children of God, we're going to have setbacks. We will. But the one thing that we need to know is this. Even though you and I have setbacks, we will never, ever have a full-on failure. And the reason for that is this. You and I may have a failure, but God is always faithful. And it is his faithfulness that keeps us from having the failure. Because he told us that he will be with us always. Always. A complete failure means that God has to leave. God does not leave his children. So as children of God, quit listening to the world, quit listening to Satan tell you that you are a failure. Because ladies and gentlemen, as a child of God, you are not a failure. You had a setback. Okay? And there's a difference between a setback and a failure. A setback says that I'll get back on the path and continue on. A failure just says I quit. I'm done, and God wants nothing to do with me ever again. And that is not going to happen. Okay? And so Asa, or Asa's, his story actually contains chapters 14, 15, and 16. Okay? And here's what we're going to find. That there are 3 things that you're going to find in this story. Number 1 out of here is a route. A route. Okay? R-O-U-T-E. Okay? I call it a route. I call a root the thing that plants have and trees have. That's a root. Okay? A route is R-O-U-T-E. That's a pathway. And so in these 3 chapters, there's going to be a pathway. The second thing that you're going to find is this is a lesson in also a revival. Okay, so there is a route that God is telling us to help us to learn. There is a route to get us to revival in our life. Okay. And then the third thing that we're going to get is this, is rebuke. And there's some things that we need to learn about rebuking the evilness and the things that are going on in our life. Okay? So let's talk about this route, and let's go in 2 Chronicles chapter 14, verses 8 through 13. And I think I've got them all up here on the screen. Read them in your Bible. They may be a little bit different, but let's go. It said Asa had an army. And this is catch these numbers. Okay? These are awesome. Asa had an army of 300,000. 300,000 from Judah. bearing large shields and spears, and 280,000 from Benjamin, bearing regular shields and drawing the bow. All these were valiant warriors. 580,000 men that were warriors. You talk an army. He's got an army. That's a big army. Let's go on. Verse number 9. Then Zerah, the Cushite, came against them with an army of 1,000,000 men and 300 chariots. And they came as far as Marishah. Okay, so Asa marched out against him and lined up in a battle formation in Zephah, the valley of Marishah. And then Asa cried out to the Lord his God. He cried out, Lord, there is no one besides you to help the mighty and those without strength. Besides you, or he says, here's what he says, help us, Lord our God, for we depend on you, and in your name we have come against this large army, Lord. You are our God. Do not let a mere mortal hinder you. I've got 580,000 men. We're outnumbered, Lord, almost 2-1. They're bigger than us. So the Lord routed the Cushites before Asia and before Judah, and the Cushites fled. God says, okay, you've prayed. You wanted me to do it. You know that I'm the only one that can do it. Nobody else can do it. I'll show you. You believe it? We'll do it. So then Asa and the people who were with him pursued them as far as Gerar. The Cushites fell until they had what? No survivors. For they were crushed before the Lord and his army. So the people of Judah carried off a great supply of loot. God will deliver your enemies to you. God is the one that is helping us. So listen. Imagine you're a young king, 30 years old, and you get wind that there's an army coming after you. Remember they had those 1,000,000 men march and 1,000,000 people marches, and you saw all these people, and they never were 1,000,000. But this is what Asa's seeing. He's seeing this huge army coming at him. And as he's seeing this, he's seeing all of his friends that he cares and he loves. Asa was a compassionate king. And there are times, you think about it, there are times when you seem like everything is just coming against you and you're being crushed and you're being overwhelmed. Can I tell you something? God will always give you a friend. He will always give you a friend to encourage you. So many times we withdraw. And God's saying, no, I don't want you withdrawing. I want you to stand. You care for these people. You love these people. And I want you to know that I've got you. I've got you. So when we begin to see everything, every animal, every building, every field in the kingdom is about to be overrun. So what do? You do what honestly, When we see everything's going, you do what every Christian or every person of faith does. You pray until your knuckles get white. That's when you know you're really praying. You know, there's so many times, I don't know if you've ever done this. When you're praying, you're a lot of times what we do, Father, Satan is really attacking me. God, he's really messing with me. He's really messing with my family. He's doing all of this stuff. And Father, I just wish you'd take care of him. Amen. Instead of, God, I'm angry. Satan is coming against my family. Satan is coming against my friend. He's coming against everybody. And you're praying and you're praying and you're praying, and your knuckles begin to get white. You're mad. You're not mad at God. You're mad at sin. You're angry at something that's coming to hurt. Not just hurt you, but hurt people that you love. And sometimes we need to get angry. Oh, but we're people of compassion. We're people that, we got to be people of love. You know what? I think that God was in heaven, and he looked down at Sodom and Gomorrah and everything that was going on down there and everything that it had become. And he says, I am sick and tired of this. They're done. They have taken what I created as good and totally messed it every bit. So bad that we can't even find 8 righteous people in a city of hundreds of thousands. Destroy it. Don't just get rid of it. Destroy it so it will never, ever be found again. I think God gets angry, ladies and gentlemen. I think when Jesus was crucified on the cross, God got angry. When Jesus said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. Because the Bible said that the sun went dark. The earth began to quake. It began to open. The Bible said that the graves opened up. Later on, it said they were walking around in Jerusalem. Tell me, God wasn't ticked off. Because guess what? The next time God raises the dead, honey, it's all exploding. Amen? So what do you do? And what does God do? When we get angry, like God, the Bible says that God hates sin. He gets angry about it. And so what does God do when we get angry about sin and we ask him to help us? What does he do? He answers our prayer. Maybe the problem in the church is as to why we don't feel revival, and maybe the reason we don't feel revival in our life is we're not angry enough yet. We're not upset enough yet about what's going on. We come up and say, God, we just don't like the election. We don't like who's in power. We don't like this. We don't like that. And God's saying, okay, so what do you want to do about it? Well, get angry. No, what happened was we've been told as Christians to keep your mouth shut and pray. God's saying, no, pray, but pray loud. Be mad. Get upset. And he did. He answered them. And look at what he did. He does more than they ask for. Okay? He not only protected their kingdom and everyone that he loved, but guess what he did? He turned around and everything that they had, he gave to them. He delivered it into their hands. And that's what he did. In the New Testament, Paul wrote that God is able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above all that you can ask or imagine. We sing that song, I Can Only Imagine. Only imagine what God can do. And let me tell you something, he can do more. We can't even imagine what God can do when we really get to the point of getting upset and getting mad and asking God to work. So Ezra, God is telling us about how God is using this. The people have been away for 70 years. They've just moved back into the land. And now all of a sudden they're being conquered. Okay? These people are insecure. Hold on a minute, God. You just brought us from over here. We're back in our land. You just gave us our land back. We've been away for 70 years. And now all of a sudden they're coming to take it away from us again. God, what will you do to help? And God says, watch me. Step back. You pray, I'll deliver. And sometimes we need to understand that. There are times when it's like, do you remember when we came out of COVID and everything opened back up? Remember, it was like, well, I know we're not supposed to wear masks anymore, but do I dare eat in that restaurant? For those of you that had kids in school, I know some would have wanted to say, do I dare send my kids back to school? But I think they said, I've had my kids for 18 months. I think I'm going to send them to school. You know, I need some rest from them and everything. But look at it. They're saying it's coming back. We're going to start shutting things down. Some places have already done it. They've already saying mask up again, and everything that's there, and all of these things that are happening. Listen, we need to understand that Ezra's trying to tell us about God's faithfulness, okay? And so what does he do? When you look at the lesson of the route, and let me give you these things, okay, real quick. What does he do? He routed a 1,000,000-man army. He developed the route. He supplied all of the needs that they needed. He supplied all of their financial needs as well as physical needs of the nation. He also gave them a job, and he also gave them friends, encouragement. He kept them from falling. And let me say this. Remember, there's this little prayer that everybody prays. And then they have this little line in there that says, lead me not into temptation, but deliver me from evil. Do you understand that he's capable of doing that? And if if you don't think that he's capable of doing that, then why ask him? Lead me not into temptation, but deliver me from evil. You know what you're asking him to do? Get rid of the evil one so that you aren't bothered by him, or let him bother you, but God, protect me. Deliver me. That's what the nation here was asking. The enemy is coming. The evil one's coming. God, deliver us. And what does he do? That's the route, ladies and gentlemen. And he gave us this route also in 2 Chronicles 7:14, which we already read, which we continue to read. And again, 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse number 14. You really need to read this verse because too many people have misused this verse where it says, if my people, which are called by my name, would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, he said, I will deliver them. But you need to read preceding the verses because preceding the verses was a pandemic that had struck the nation of Israel. And it was destroying them. And what were we coming out of? We, ladies and gentlemen, we got worried about what was called a COVID virus. But there is a pandemic that has hit America that we have still not been delivered from. And that is America turning their back on Jesus, on God. We're no longer a God-fearing nation or a God-fearing people. God's name is not used in prayer. God's name is used in vanity. And God is saying, if you really truly want me to heal you, you've got to come back to me. Quit turning from me and quit using me as a spare tire. America, I am not your spare tire. If you want to get down the road, you better have me on all four tires. Don't put me in the trunk or think that I'm one of those little donuts that you put on any time that you get into trouble. He's saying, no, you either fill those suckers up with my air, my breath, or you're going to go flat a lot. So there's your route, okay? Let's talk about revival, chapter 15, okay? So comes the second lesson. The route's over. His men are returning home to their families. And so what ends up happening is as they're going back home, the Lord sends them a gentleman by the name of Azariah. Okay, and this is found in 2 Chronicles chapter 15. How am I doing? Not good. In verses 1 through 9. Okay, I'm not going to read them. They're there. Okay, because if I read all of this, we'd be here till 2 o'clock this afternoon. So what happens? They've already had a great victory. Okay, they beat the enemy. Now they're on their way home. And on their way home from this, God asked Asa to make it even greater. They had begun building all of these temples before, and they had been worshiping other gods, and they did all of these things. And so Asa thinks about, what's the first commandment? Remember, the first commandment is, I am the Lord your God, and thou shalt have no other gods before me. So what does Asa do? Asa sends out wrecking crews. And you know what they did? Every idol that they found, every temple that they found, they tore them down. They tore them down. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to start tearing down the idols and temples in our lives. Where we're not serving God and God's not being put first. Asa sends them out. They just didn't tear them down. They built new ones. Okay? And so they go there under Asa's leadership, and verse number 10 says they were gathered in Jerusalem in the 3rd month of the 15th year of Asa's reign. And so when you read that, you think, okay, so the 3rd month of the 10th day, the 3rd month of the 15th year of Asa's reign. The 3rd month is very specific and very unique. Okay? Because on the Jewish calendar, the third month is either late May or early June. Now a lot of y'all think, okay, late May, early June, what's the significance of that? Very significant, okay? And the significance is this, that in Leviticus chapter 23, there is something that is supposed to happen. And it happens in the 3rd month of the Jewish calendar. It is called Pentecost. Pentecost wasn't just something that happened in Acts. Pentecost was something that had been happening for a long thousands of years. It had been going on. It was a feast. And there were certain things that you were supposed to do at this feast. Okay? They sacrificed to the Lord. On Pentecost, the nation was to sacrifice a bull, 7 lambs, and 2 rams. That's what they did. Okay? But in 2 Chronicles 15:11, Asa says, hold on a minute. They sacrificed 700 cattle, 7,000 sheep and goats from all of the plunder. They gave it to the Lord and said, here, you did this. It was a time, Pentecost was a time for the nation to thank God and ask for his blessing. So when David was asked to build an altar to the Lord, he did more than what he was asked. When Solomon was seeking God's favor, he sacrificed. Remember, he sacrificed more than what was expected. When Asa and his people made the sacrifice, they gave God 1,000 more than he expected. How many times have you sacrificed to God more than what's expected? Today, we don't. Today is very difficult for people to give up any time to God. I was talking to Tammy. Here's the way people feel. You don't understand, Pastor. I work 5 days a week or 6 days a week. Sunday is my only day off. I don't have time to come to church. I don't have time. I've been away from my family all week. God didn't ask you to be away from your family all week. No, you don't understand. I've got to do that in order to make a living. No, you don't. No, you don't. What you do is you learn to live within your means. I'll guarantee you, if you make $1,000, you will live according to $1,000. If you make $2,000, I guarantee you that you will probably spend $2,000. Because most people don't understand the principle of saving. Most people understand the principle of spending. That is why America today has now over $1 trillion in debt of credit card. At what rate? Almost 30%. And you know what's going to happen in about 2 to 3 years? The banks are going to implode because people can't pay. You want to talk about a recession? It's coming if we don't change our ways. Okay, so so what do? They in 2 Chronicles chapter 15 in 12 and 13, it talks about them entering into a covenant, and these people were really serious. But remember what was said. It said they took an oath. Okay, and they swore it. In 2 Chronicles 15, 14 through 15, and all of these things you need to understand. It said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, and we will serve him with all our hearts, heart, soul, mind, and strength. And whoever won't seek the Lord, well, it says off with his head. How would that be, man? Let's line everybody up. And let's ask you, are you going to serve the Lord with all your heart, mind, body, and soul? Nope. Okay, off with your head. Let's go to the next one. That's how serious they were about what it was, because God had helped them. We need to understand that the second lesson of revival is this, and it's again in those parts, and it says this: if you seek the Lord, you will find him. The problem is we've quit seeking. I don't know about y'all. How many of you all used to play hide and go seek? Did you ever? I hated playing with that person that had this hiding place where you couldn't find them. You know? And there were times you could go home and sleep all night, and that person would come back out in the daylight, and you'd say, where you been? I'm not telling you. That's my secret place. Well, let me tell you something. God doesn't have a secret place. God is right out in the open to be found. He's not hiding, okay? And the Bible tells us to seek and you will find him. God is not hiding from you. He is in plain sight. Quit let Satan try to tell you that God doesn't love you, okay? So, how much am I going to get to this? Not all of it. So, we need to get the lesson. But let's get the last lesson, okay? And this is the lesson from rebuke. And that is found in chapter 16, okay? And what we find is, I'll give you the background, and you can read all of this, okay? Because it talks about some cities and some things that were going there. Remember when the Cushites came against Judah, which was back there, God had turned them away, and all of these things that were going on. So what had happened in verse number 16 is this. Verse number 16, Asa, who started out great and wonderful, saw what God was doing. And here's what we do. When we come to this spot, and I'll finish it like this. Here's what we do. When the enemy's coming up against us and everything, and we get white-knuckled prayer, and we ask for deliverance, and we get it, we're okay, man. We're all fired up. We're ready to go. We're ready to do, God, whatever you want me to do. And so we start working. And we're working hard. And then we're getting a little tired. And a little bit more tired. And a little bit more tired. And finally, we got to sit out. And guess what? That's what Asa did. Asa sat down. And God said, what did I do for you? What did I do for you? Let me ask you this question. And I'm serious. I just need your focus for about 30 seconds. What has God done for you? What does he deserve? What are you giving him? When's the last time you told God, I'll give you everything? And mean it. Mean it. It's easy to say, I give you everything. And then forget the promise that you made. The day I got saved, I made the same promise you made. God, I give you my life. I give you everything. And there are times I forgot that promise. And I regret those moments. The best moments of my life have been when I come back and said, God, I am so sorry. I failed you. And he says, okay. It's not okay, but it's okay. Because I am a God of mercy. I am a God of grace. But I want you to know one thing. I am a God of love. And I still love you. I haven't stopped loving you. But I want to know, how much do you really love me? How much? This morning, God's asking you the same question. How much do you really love me?